Welcome, bitches. This is the With Love Nick podcast. There is nothing off limits here. Oh, get on your power panties. Success happens on the other side of conventional thinking. I say this all the time because when I was conventionally thinking, it left me burnt out and drunk. Welcome to this week's episode of the With Love Nick podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of With Love Nick. I have an extremely special guest with me today, Kristen Stuart, and I am actually just going to let her introduce herself because I feel like her voice in what she does is going to be so much more explanatory and energetically aligned than how I can explain it. So I'm going to let her take the floor real quick and then we will just dive in.
Oh my goddess, thank you. And it's such an honor to be here with you. So, to everyone listening, hello, and just loving on all the energy that is amplifying here from this sacred space is first what I want to say. I could feel it the moment I entered this space with you, Nick. And so, for those of you who are meeting me or listening to me for the first time, my name is Kristen Stuart, and I am based in the heart of the Canadian Rocky Mountains. This has been home for the better part of the last 20 some years. And the work that I do is a frequency. And so some love to refer to me as a midwife of awakening,
Mm.
a multidimensional mentor. I work in the quantum realms with energy. I read the Akashic records, and I would say that the biggest part of my work and this mission I've said yes to is ultimately as a light worker and a spiritual mentor for high performing leaders, as that's where I feel it's like my highest level of service is being summoned. And so it's working on frequency, energetics, deeply connected to as God source, as this remembrance ultimately
Mm.
that we are all in and coming home to our soul truth. And I'll walk you there.
I literally already have tears in my eyes. The way you articulated that was so beautiful. And I actually woke up this morning. I went through a few of your lives because I really, really just wanted to soak in all of your energy before we had this conversation today because it was just so powerful and I was so drawn to you. I'm like already getting emotional. I can just like feel our energy colliding right now and it's so beautiful. Oh, oh my gosh, girl, this has never happened on a podcast before.
Why?
Uh, One of
We-
the messages that came through for me when I was watching your content was the and also your introduction. I'm so happy for you to be here today. So aligned. Your introduction of being that support for the high performing leader is just so important because it truly is this work, this support that you offer for the high performing leader that the high performing leaders need. We require this to ascend into new levels of self leadership and business and all of the things that include these external factors, which is the money, which is the clients, which is the validation, which is all of these things. And the live that stood out to me, wow, there's just like my eyes are watering. The live that stood out to me was when you were talking about how and why we were all here to co-create and how that's been so disconnected
Mhm,
over the generations. And I
mhm,
would love for you to dive in, first of all, what that means for the work that you do with your clients, how you bring people back to the center of what we're really here to accomplish.
mhm,
And I really want to know also where that transpired for you in your life. Have you always felt this way? Was it like this deep knowing that this was the work that you were supposed to do? Was it a pivotal moment in your life that you were, this work that you do started to you articulated this work in this type of way that it was serving the high performing leader in a way that you bring them back to center and separate them from the conditioned external factors that have really separated us all over the generations. If that made any sense, I would love for you to
Sure.
just dive into that.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll start with how I arrived here
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
And there's been several pivotal moments. There's been several points of I'll call awakening. There's different junctures as we are continually on this path of ascension, on this path of evolution, and literally meeting ourselves at new choice points all the time.
Mm.
And at these choice points, what what are we choosing? And so for myself, I've been on the spiritual path since I was young. Like I always felt very connected to nature. So that was my gateway, I would say, the first intro. I grew up in northern Alberta in a small town called Cold Lake, and I loved being outdoors. I loved, being out on the motorbike, on the snowmobile, mountain biking, whatever it was with my father. I was always up for adventure, and outdoors is where I felt really at home. And so I'm so grateful for that. And the other piece is that I grew up surrounded by Indigenous wisdom. My community was surrounded by Indigenous reservations, and so my school had me participating in sweetgrass ceremonies and ceremony and ritual from the time I was quite young. And it's interesting because I was in a Catholic school, and when the kids from the reservation hit grade 9, they would come to our school, and it was such a gift because that is actually what I really plugged into, was that connection to
Mhm.
spirituality through the indigenous wisdom teachings, which propelled me on a certain path
Yeah.
ultimately. Now I'm going to obviously jump forward throughout my life and speak to the most pivotal moment. And this was 2012, which I consider to be, it was the last big wave of awakening. It was a cosmic reset. There's multiple things I can speak to about the year 2012, which was also prophesied by many of the indigenous traditions as a shift, a time of shift. And this was when I had I'll say the spiritual smackdown, as some people refer to it, or what was the big spiritual awakening. And so I'd been on the path as a yoga teacher, meditation teacher already. I stepped on a yoga mat in 2002 for the first time and knew something about this was
Yeah.
calling me to share. So 2012 was when I decided to go for the big dream and launch a yoga studio called Sacred Roots.
Wow.
And prior to this, I was journeying to the Sacred Valley of Peru for the first time, and the first of what would be many times. And I was going specifically for the 11-11-11 gateway with my mentor at the time. And it was beyond, for anyone who's been to Peru or the Sacred Valley, the energetics are beyond. And essentially, I wound up being activated into what would be referred to as a Kundalini awakening. I wasn't aware fully of what was going on. I just knew I was flying, and I was coming back, launching the studio. And within 7 months, I was on the floor in full adrenal burnout and then ultimately in suicidal psychosis and
Ah.
hospitalized. So, ignoring the signs that the way I was operating was ultimately, of course, not sustainable, yet I literally felt like Superwoman. And I'm hearing this, so I'm going to speak it. I remember coming back from Peru, literally flying into Calgary International Airport. And as we were coming in, internally, it was like I could feel consciousness dropping. And I
Wow.
was like, we've got a lot of work to do here in North America. That was my first thought. And I knew things were about to go next level. And they did. They skyrocketed, and then for myself, they plummeted, as they do, because I needed to learn what I needed to learn. And I had to, heal my body, heal my nervous system, heal my brain, and heal my relationship with myself, and also choose a new way of living, a new way of being. And so I had become quite addicted to moving fast, forceful, hustling. I
Mhm.
was also, at the time, had been for about like 10 years living a very adrenaline fueled lifestyle. So here in the Rockies, with my husband, he's an international mountain guide, and we loved to get out there and get after it together. And so rock climbing, ice climbing, alpine climbing, you name it.
Ice
And
climbing.
yeah, and then, so it was just like there's this warrior frequency.
Yeah.
Yeah. And underneath that, though, and this is really important to share here, was a trauma story that had
Mm.
not yet been healed. So I was going to get very strong. And there was something very satisfying about swinging ice axes into a frozen waterfall, or, on a vertical part of a glacier, and just like getting strong was a key part of that. There was also incredible enjoyment and excitement, and a thriving from the challenge. But what I had done was concocted an incredible cocktail that I was addicted to,
Mhm.
which was the high of all of that,
Yes.
compounded with then an energy of awakening, then a launching of a business that was my greatest dream, and manifested my greatest fear, which was failure.
Wow.
So it was 7 months, up, down, and then I was out. And the healing journey that I began it was fascinating to be the observer to this, and to witness and understand that I had ultimately been living disconnected from the truth of my soul,
Mhm.
because there had been a fracture from the trauma I had experienced, and it was sexual trauma. And there was a fracture in my psyche as well. And I'm not going to dive into that fully for the purpose of our conversation here today, yet it's it was fascinating to start to unravel and see all of the threads, and then also recognize what is possible. And my healing journey began with a devotion to meditation, because I was always more inclined to move my physical body. I was also a personal
Mm.
trainer and yoga teacher and hiking guide, international hiking guide. At that, like, that was part of my manifesting
You're like
generator.
everything. I was just everything.
I was all the things,
All the things.
Um, and I had to really heal down to the soul level, and of course started to understand why this was happening. And 2012 was when I met the goddess. And it was like I finally was tapped awake, and it had to get super loud because I was good at ignoring the messages and pushing through things.
Mm.
And even at the time, the voice in my head was, "What's wrong with you? You're stronger than this." And I literally couldn't get up off the floor of the yoga studio. Like
Mhm.
I would just be crying. I was like, "Pull yourself together. You've got to teach a class." And there was the stress of the business side of it and all the things anyway. But it was just, this voice in my head was not very nice and was just pushing me. And it was like, "You've climbed mountains that were, 14-hour days, and what's wrong with you? Get up and pull yourself together." And of course, it's just what's going on is I'm just like crashing myself further. And so I just had to go to the very edge.
Mm.
And I chose to walk to the very edge. And then it was like the divine intervention.
Wow.
The feeling of this.
It actually being an intervention.
Yes, yes.
I feel all of that, like, I feel everything that you're describing right now is just, like, flowing through my body right now. Mm.
And ultimately, it was to walk me home to the divine feminine. And thus began my journey of what I'll call initiations with the divine feminine, the divine mother. Working with, I did work with plant medicine initially when I felt ready, when I was stable enough in my nervous system. But ultimately, it was the meditation. I knew I could just lay there because I couldn't physically do anything, which was very challenging for me. I had zero energy in my body. It was just my organs were functioning, but that was about it. And I would listen and receive and listen and receive. And I could feel something
So it
start.
was almost like you were so habitually used to operating from a masculine energy.
Yes.
What's your human design?
My manifesting generator.
Okay, so my question to you in regards to this is when that happened, you were consciously aware that something was happening, right? It was you were talking about you were becoming conscious and you were moving from this place of operating in a masculine energy. And as a manifesting generator, how on earth, like we have that realization that something has to change, that something is changing, but now you operate from a place of intense femininity, correct?
Yes.
And so how was that transition? How long do you feel that took you? Like what was that deep behind the scenes work? Because as a generator myself, a recovering alcoholic, ADHD, I am also habitually used to my entire life operating from that masculine go, 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 go. And so for me, the transition, I mean, it took diving into things that I thought I would never have to dive back into. So if you could just explain a little bit of that inner behind the scenes work that may have required you to tap back into some things that you have wanted to forget or wanted to not resurface, like what did that look like, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. I began studying the goddess archetypes and
Mm.
teaching on them. And also understanding the fire that I've always been magnetized to the fire, and there's that ignition, and it's understanding, we are made up of all the elements: earth, air, fire, water, ether. We are here to it's like we're finding that internal balance of the masculine and feminine within all of us. And so it's like the first round for a lot of people on the awakening path, in my experience and my observation, is in the coming home to self-love. So that was one of the steps,
Yeah.
right? Is just working with self-love and seeing how I was just so like pushing, constantly pushing myself, thinking that that was the path to success, when ultimately the path is surrender, to surrender to our
Mm.
soul, to surrender to spirit. Because here's the thing, we are so divinely supported. The thing is, we learn to operate in a way that had us believing in separation.
Oh, that right there, all of that, the exact conversation I wanted to have. That the way that you articulated that, I want to ask because I know a lot of my audience is going to want to know too. When you work with your clients and you have somebody who has never even tapped into slowing the fuck down, how do you start that journey with them?
Well, it's going to start with a meditation
Mhm.
and also and audios from me.
And what if
And
that person requires a meditation to even meditate? You know what I
well,
mean?
absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, when you're getting started to slowing down and
Yeah.
creating a new way of being is
Mm.
ultimately what it is, which does require a dismantling of old identity,
Mm.
a lot of beliefs, unwinding these beliefs, and also exploring where they go back to. And so that's part of the work that we do with the subconscious, because the subconscious just is, it's the ultimate hijacker, right? It's the
Yeah.
lens we are looking through without realizing
Yeah.
it's actually the debris that we're not supposed to be repeating, but it keeps, like, it's like
Yeah.
it comes from behind us and is like, this is the lens. And until you start to purify and clear the subconscious, which in my experience is through practices like meditation and yoga nidra, it's the only way to actually clear the subconscious,
Mm.
because to you're not going to heal your mind with your mind. And there's an analogy, it's like trying to stop a hurricane by blowing on it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You're not going to just think your way into clarity, because there's 80,000 some thoughts a day that go through our brain, and 80% of them are the same groove. And so we've got to go in and clean and purify this out. And when you're getting started with meditation, it's very, I feel it's very important to be guided,
Mm.
because you need a starting point. And so it's connect with your body first. Body's a great gateway.
Mm.
Body is tangible, and then the next layer that's tangible is your breath. And so starting with this, because this automatically with the breath is creating a shift in the brain and starting to, it's like we want to personal train the parasympathetic nervous system response to be stronger, louder, and more of the default than the
Mm.
sympathetic. And
Wow.
then ultimately finding that right balance between the two of them. And so this is where we begin. And then we start to look at what has created these programs to get, to this point, so that we can dismantle them. And then working with quantum healing as well. And even the Akashic records can be really supportive. And for the listeners that perhaps are unfamiliar with the term Akashic records, this is like a storehouse in consciousness of all that exists, past, present, and future. And so to go into your individual Akashic record is to go into the history of your soul from the beginning of time and access the timelines that are available in the quantum field,
I just became one giant goosebump, by the way, when you started explaining that.
and start to, it's like unplug you from the programming that's not serving, that
Mm.
comes from the past and is always connected to something in the now,
Wow.
in this existence. So it's one, what we have known is for thousands of years, and I'll reference this. If anyone is familiar with the ancient civilizations, if you've ever
Mm.
heard of Lemuria, what a time it was. We're remembering this. And Atlantis, and then the fall of Atlantis. And with the fall of Atlantis, consciousness descended, humanity's consciousness descended. This is when war consciousness and scarcity consciousness began. And
Mm.
this is when power became distorted. And we started to, this is when the patriarchy began. And it was founded in distorted masculine principles.
Mm.
And so this is where power became distorted and it turned into power over. And, the old way that we have seen leadership and perhaps even defined power. And we're in a massive reclamation and redefinition of this right now. And this is, of course, intimately connected to wealth. It's connected to our sovereignty, because we are here now to live sovereign in soul and to recognize we were never meant to give our power over to something outside of us. And many over the last couple of years, well, let's say the last 4 years, there's a reason for all of this. And this is where you and I could talk for hours upon hours,
Hours.
hours, days, months, years.
Let
Yet, yet recognize it's like everyone had to come to face any of the ways they gave their power over to someone else's decisions, not trusting self, not um, trusting the truth within. And the truth within is accessed through intuition, it's accessed through deep listening, which requires spaciousness, stillness, quietude, regulation in the nervous system, so that what we're tapping into is our truth, not a program. And I'm going to keep this thread here. What also we needed to remember was any of the ways that we have given power to money, power to a leadership that has not been, it's like honoring the truth that we are here to live in union.
Mm,
What we learned was separation. And there's endless examples in history of this, from women, for example, going through literally in the collective feminine consciousness, the remembrance of being persecuted for sacred gifts as healers, midwives, medicine women. And this is something that I've had to walk myself through for a long time. And literally until recently, there was still fear of certain things that I have to say, that I would be persecuted for them.
mm,
Now, we also remember the times of the witch hunts where women were literally pitted against each other because if you did not turn your sister in, your child would be killed or you would be.
mm.
Like this was literally history. So you think of that winding in of this consciousness. And then this patriarchal model that had everyone in competition and hierarchy. And so we just wound in thousands upon thousands of years of a consciousness into our collective psyche that has been all about separation and ultimately is fear-based. And as long as we are kept in fear, we're kept out of our power. As long as we're kept separate, we're kept out of our power. Because the greatest the greatest power is union and love.
Absolutely. Wow. That was like the best history lesson I've ever fucking heard in my entire life, by the way.
And so what we've got to do though is we've got to ask ourselves, what is the truth here? Like even when we feel fear, it's like where is this even coming from?
Well, we all know what the truth is. We all know the truth. But a lot of people who have been conditioned to think in these modern practical ways refuse the truth because it hurts and it's painful and it's scary. And so it's like we know the truth. And I do feel like and it's not even like a political truth. It's not a I'm right, you're right. It's a truth of like we all feel the truth. We all know the truth, but the majority of people fear the truth. And like you said, even up until recently, it's we fear the rejection and the scrutiny of speaking our truth. And so I would also love to hear your perception on what is shifting. What we are going through this huge shift, and we may see it more prominently because we're in an industry that constantly desires to heal but doesn't understand how. So I would love to hear your perception on how you feel we are shifting in humanity towards hopefully more of the truth and less of this surface level separation that has been going on for generations. Slowly, but then recently, more rapidly over the
Yeah.
last couple of decades. I would love to hear your perception on that.
Sure. So we're remembering our oneness ultimately. We all come from one. Every thought, every thought, every experience, everything is creating, right? This we are like one fabric of existence. And so we've got to remember this, which is what brings us into our self accountability and our self responsibility to heal ourselves, which we have the power to do and supported by those that are, you know, offering this. But we've got to go in and come home to the one within, come home to the union within. And so unity consciousness is a higher dimensional consciousness that we're currently anchoring here on earth. And if you've heard the terms fifth dimensional consciousness, which is 5D, for example, a new earth, right? A new paradigm. All of this language is being used, and depending on what circles you tend to connect in, and what lands and resonates for you, it's all beautiful because it's ultimately guiding us home to the remembrance we are one humanity. And there's this is the path of ascension, but what it requires is every individual coming home to the oneness within
Mm.
and the union with God, the union with the power we are. You know, this there's no separation between us and the divine. We are a fractal of the divine. We're an expression of the divine. And so when we remember this, we came in as light. We're vibrating low enough in this human suit. I call it a temple. And so, like, honor the temple, which is housing your light. We're here to amplify our light, turn on
Mhm.
all of our light, which is beyond that of 10 million suns. And then we'll leave as light. And while we're here, we have a really good time. And we live in love and we live in harmony and we live in peace. And some may say, well, that's so utopic. Yet, here's the thing, if we are all one fabric of existence, and every human is putting into this their thoughts, their actions, their decisions, then can we swiffer ourselves up so much to be shining and so bright and in such a high frequency that what we're adding into the collective is our highest.
Wow.
And I mean, what an honor that is.
I say this all the time. It's just, it's such a privilege to be able to live in that way.
Yeah.
I love this suit example, by the way. It's so meaty. When you said it, it was like the suit, and I'm like the meat suit. My weird brain went to that. And
Yeah,
I love how
exactly.
you articulated that. And I also love that you said we're here to have a fucking good time.
Yes. We're here to live
I
limitless.
What is your take on, we're just like riffing because I am so intrigued by this conversation. This is like the best conversation I've had in a long time. What is your take on us being the suit being available to us in the 3D while it's housing our soul, that we're here for pleasure? What's your take on that?
I mean, we're designed for pleasure, and like this is what we're here to live in pleasure, yet we
Mm.
learned pleasure was wrong. That's programming that we're dismantling. And so as everyone reclaims their pleasure, reclaims their wealth, women especially reclaim their sexual power, because this power is so great. It's feared because of the alchemy of it. And so this was a suppression. And so this created so much distortion around sexuality and women fearing it. You know, the terms, if a woman has desire, or, you know, is potent in her sexuality, there's the language like the slut. And we just look at all of the ways this sacredness of the feminine has been defiled.
Mm.
And and also the sacredness of the masculine, because I will always speak to both,
Yeah.
because we are here to bring this union back. It's been gone from the earth for far too long, is what I say.
Mm.
And we are the embodiment of this as we recognize where we have disconnected from our power the power, for many women right now, the work is around sexual reclamation. And as we start to look into history, and if it's like the history, the tantric path. And so as a yoga teacher for 20 some years, I was introduced to the tantric path many years ago, the path of oneness. And it's like the ultimate path of union through sexual practice and the sacredness of sexuality, and how it's through these alchemical practices that many stem from ancient Egypt. And there's a whole lot of story that could come from my experience in Egypt a couple of years ago, and all the magic that's happening with that, with the various goddesses that we work with.
This
And
will just be a 5 episode run. We'll just
the expressions of the divine feminine, and why there's so many conversations right now around Mary Magdalene and who she truly is. And
Mm,
again, there's different stories, and it's not about the details of the stories. It's about the resonance that is felt, as every individual is going to have a different truth, and consciousness meets us where we're at, takes us where we need to go, so long as we keep choosing to evolve on this journey. But what we're doing is remembering. We're remembering
mm,
the beginning, I like to say. We go back to the beginning to remember our existence as light before we forgot. We got the amnesia to forget, to walk through the dense timelines, to walk through the descent from the golden age into the silver, into the bronze, into the iron age, which is also known as the Kali Yuga. And if anyone's familiar with goddess Kali, she's the ultimate mother because she's the ultimate destroyer.
mm.
As
Whoa.
the fires of transmutation have to happen, because all chaos precedes peace, rebirth.
Just speaking straight to my soul, girl. I'm like, I don't even think I have any skin left right here. It's just like I'm just so wide open with everything that you're saying.
And
I
so it's like, where are we at right now? Remembering our power. We get to be the ones who get to heal through the quantum field, where
Mhm.
there's no such thing as time space. We exist beyond this, though we do have this third dimensional existence we're responsible to, because we said yes to this human mission.
To the meat suit.
We said yes to the meat suit, to the temple. So we are here to clear and cut the cords to the density of what was. That's really where we're at right now. So we're not pulling through and repeating the history that has clearly not served us as a humanity. We're here to bring through the light as us,
Mhm.
through us. What does that mean? We've got to show up fully with our shadow,
Mm,
totality, because without shadow, there is no light. Without light, there is no shadow. So this is the human journey, is to navigate this, and all the density is coming to the surface right now, because what we have support on this ascension journey is these ever higher frequencies of light that are literally pouring into the planet, increased solar flares, increased solar activity. And what it does is it meets our electromagnetic field, which is also hitting our nervous systems. So for those of you that have been feeling anxiety or what we call depression, recognize it's because the nervous system, you are being upgraded to hold higher light. Okay.
mm, the
So
upgrade.
that's one piece of it. And just think about plugging yourself into the highest voltage ever. And the human has never known this level of light in our meat suit, because we vibrate low enough to exist in form. We are matter, right? So as this high frequency light's coming in, and by the way, the last few days, so this is April 19th, this is being recorded. The last few days have had an intensity to them, but ultimately the last 4 years have had. And 2012 is when it really began. Higher frequencies started coming in to support the awakening of humanity. So we've got to learn how to integrate this light. We go through the upgrades. It can be physically, you feel a lot of discomfort. There's all sorts of different I call them ascension upgrades that you might be experiencing. But all of it is inviting you to clean it up, to let go of to work through the shadow, to face whatever it is so you can liberate all of your life and be here living in pure pleasure, joy, limitless, wildly wealthy, and ultimately, let's turn this existence into a divine party. That's that's where we're at.
Mm.
Though we see
I,
through our eyes is a lot of chaos.
mm,
However, here's where the mastery comes in as leaders, and I call it sacred leadership. We can see what's going on, yet we know in our hearts the truth. And so we stand for the truth and we stand in our power and we, bring ourselves into our mastery on this path to stand potently without getting caught up and hooked in the fear, which tends to pull people out of their center into fear, into separation. And guess what? We just keep repeating history.
mm. I I really love the way, thank you for bringing all of that in and all of the personal stuff that you shared. I feel like the way that you articulated this is going to give so many people who listen to this the understanding of why they're feeling the way that we're feeling. Because, like you said, and what really is true for the majority of human beings on this earth is we feel the pull, we feel the truth, and we suppress it and we push it. We feel the, we're always asking for signs. And when we feel the signs, we push them away because they feel uncomfy or they feel unnatural, or it's temporarily um, pulling us off of our path that we think that we have control over. And so this message was like, almost because even me understanding where we're at, the people who may not or may have these feelings, I mean, that was just a huge fucking permission slip to just allow it to happen. And
Well, and
also
trust the unknown. Yeah.
exactly, which
And we
most people
see,
fear.
right, we fear the unknown, and we're here to see and lead in the dark
Mm.
from
We,
from trust, from faith,
right. Yeah,
from love. Yeah.
exactly. And I feel like you and I, we are so privileged to have been chosen to have the strength that we have to be the ones that go first
Sure.
and also do the work to lead the people who may not have that strength yet. And also, just to be transparent, how heavy that work can be sometimes.
It
Um,
is. It is,
a-
absolutely.
and
And
what
it's bringing
an
us
honor,
all in yes.
an
I keep
honor.
saying it's like, what an honor to be here right now.
Mm,
And I mean, of course, there's been times when I was like, I signed up for this, and yes, you did, and
yes.
you're gonna be okay because you're able to hold this. You're able to walk through the fire, not shrink back.
Well, we just
Yeah,
don't give ourselves enough credit. A lot of people don't give themselves and the power that they hold enough credit because we have been conditioned to lean into the external to give us
yes,
the credit. We've been conditioned to feel like the diploma, the house, the marriage, the kids, the paycheck, the job that has a timeline. You go in at 9, you're done at 5, that all of these determine our worth and determine our power, our self-power. And like you've said, and like I say very often, we give that away. We give that away to the external when everything that we desire, all of the resources to fuel that desire we have within us. But a lot of people fear the work of tapping into that because it can be painful, because it can be hard. And not only, I mean, I remember at the ripe age of 37. No, I'm just kidding. I remember at a very young age feeling like I had the answers, but being conditioned to feel like, well, I'm too young to have the answers. How would I have the answers? I haven't had the
right.
experience. But also remembering that we have lifetimes and ancestors and all of these codes that have nothing to do with our current circumstance
Right.
that are within us. We
Yes.
have so much to tap into. And what a lot of people fear is that temporary discomfort of the resistance or the edge that has to be gone through in order to access those codes. Otherwise, we would all be just happy fucking millionaires that have all these codes readily available to us at the surface. And it's just, it doesn't come with the meat suit. We have
Yeah,
to go in the meat suit to
gotta
get
go
to
in.
get to the
Yeah.
juice, to get to the rarity of it. And oh, this conversation, I feel like I could literally talk to you for hours about all of this. But alas, I have an appointment. I have a hypnosis appointment that I must attend to get to the
Amazing.
codes.
The
Um,
codes are all
so
within.
yes, I would love to just ask you one more thing. When you said that you were addicted to the adrenaline and all of those things, when you feel that surface at times, and I know that you are very marinated and experienced at knowing how to navigate that, but somebody new who might be going through that,
Mhm.
besides the meditation, maybe they can't get into a meditation,
Of
maybe
course.
they're on the go and they're
Sure.
practicing transitioning from this masculine go 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 and really wanting to tap into their feminine energy. What would be just a quick tool that they could take with them on the go that would help them until they can get to that safe space to dive deeper into a meditation?
Sure. Yeah, and so I mean, there's a number of different physical practices too, like getting outside in nature because the negative ions help reset. And so, these are things like, and what I often will ask a client is, how do you desire to feel? What are the feelings? The three feelings. How do you desire to feel?
Mm,
And then every decision you make, you will reference those feelings. Does this make me feel more spacious, more at peace, more free? Yes or no?
mm,
And it helps break that pattern of one saying yes to everything or packing the schedule. And often the packing of the schedule is to stay busy so that we don't have to go in and like be with ourselves, because it can be scary to go in and be with ourselves. And often what I would hear is, I don't, I'm scared of what I might find, yet what you'll find is your soul. And what you'll find is love, and what you'll find is peace, and what you'll find is spirit. And it's been the greatest awakening and the greatest coming home. And what we're all here to do is
mm,
walk each other home to peace, love, joy, play, wealth, freedom, because we all desire freedom in some way. So does your life and your choices, does it help you feel more freedom? And whatever that is. I know my ideal schedule. I require a lot of spaciousness because of the work that I do in the higher dimensions and realms and energy healing and all of this. And so it's like it took me a while to figure out what works for me, and the feeling that I love, and it's building my life, building my business around my life, building my business around how I desire to feel
mm.
and trust. I trust this.
I want to keep going. Thank you so much for all of this. We have to talk more. Let's just start our own podcast.
Okay.
Until then, where can people find you? How can they work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at underscore Kristen Stewart, and on Facebook the same. I I've been doing some transitions with my brand because I initially came in with a brand Sacred Femme, and Sacred Femme is the movement.
Mm,
However, I didn't love having multiple Instagram channels. It was like, I want simplicity and potency. And so my website's under construction, but everything is through Instagram, or you can sign up for my emails and you'll stay in the know of what's coming. Reach out. I love hearing from you. And everyone that's here, we're going to be offering you a gift of 1 month inside one my membership that's called the channel, and
mm,
it's where you get my audio codes, transmissions, activations. I go in there 2, 3, 4 times a week whenever I feel prompted. It's a Telegram channel, and it's a channel of, source from me to you.
beautiful.
from soul to soul, and sometimes tuning into these frequencies because it's all transmission of frequency and codes. This is what we do. And so in there are meditations, in there are shares on what's going on this ascension of humanity right now and why it's important. And no, you're not going crazy, you're ascending. So
Beautiful.
these are some ways that we can connect, and it'd be an honor to share in this space and hear from all of you.
I love that so much. Well, I will also drop your links in the description. Everybody go check Kristen out. Watching her live, sign up for that free month. I mean, what a gift. Thank you so much for bringing that. I will see you all on the next episode of With Love Nick. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please reach out if anybody has any questions about any of this because just what a gift. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will talk to you all soon. With love, Nick and Kristen.